I'm Allie Zendrian, Editor-in-Chief of Brand News, and this is the Financial Services News You Might Have Missed podcast. This is where I uncover news gems that might not have gotten their full chance to sparkle, and I dust them off a little bit. I'm joined by my trusted co-host and my personal financial advisor, Brandon Galisi of Galisi Financial. Brandon, how's your week been?
Been way better than this time last week. I was healthy enough to jump on for 30 minutes or so, but this week I've been much better. I still not fully 100%, but definitely much closer compared to last week. So recovery's good. Still trying to rest and get plenty of fluids, but yeah, it is a much better time in the household this week compared to last and being sick in bed.
I am so excited to see you this alive. I gotta say, seeing you last week, I basically wanted to tell you not to do it, but you showed up, so I felt bad.
That was a brutal week from a sickness perspective, but yeah, we're back now and feeling so much better. So we're all good.
Good. So our first piece of news this week is from AtoZ network member OnBord. Elevation Point has begun utilizing OnBord to streamline and speed up advisor transitions and client onboarding. And for those who might not be familiar, Elevation Point has been doing minority stakes and other deals in financial advisor firms and has been doing them at quite an impressive clip. OnBord leverages SMS to gently remind investors when they have data that needs to be transmitted, so that it moves the process along a little bit faster. And in the press release announcing this, that firms using OnBord have seen a reduction in transition time, with some completing these transitions in as little as 30 days. So I thought, given, and especially the DeVoe report just came out saying that our M&A was at a record. It seems like every year it's at a record. So it seems like this is that much more important, but would love to hear your thoughts about this.
Right. I mean, even whenever I left the large financial services company back in 2021 and went independent, the big focus at the beginning, and I did also have a non-solicit agreement that I had to navigate. So that was kind of a pain. So most transitions are at least not going to have to deal with that aspect of it. But I definitely had to deal with a lot of new paperwork and making sure that I got clients once they did agree to follow me over. I had to get all the new paperwork, even though we had done all the paperwork, of course, at firm A. Now I have to get it all over for firm B. And I know others that have transferred different custodians, or they went from one independent firm to they associated with another one. And again, one of the major pain points is getting everything. It's more of the administration. It's the paperwork. So I think the quote that I really liked from the article was focus on relationships rather than paperwork. So that one jumped out to me and makes a lot of sense, because overall, typically people are moving because they believe that it's a better fit for both themselves and the end client. So anything to make that process a bit easier, where again, they can just get back up and running, focus on the relationships and the planning versus just the actual paperwork. It's very important, but ultimately can be done more efficient, something to automate a bit further.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. I think it's also important. So when you make a transition, for instance, so any of your clients at the time, they're not at a point in their lives necessarily where they were like, could we just work with a new firm? Like they're associated with you and you made a move. So I think it's important for people to realize too, that because this is coming at not the ideal time necessarily for the client, that it really behooves people to just get it done as quickly as possible before somebody has the second chance to say, yeah, you know what, this is kind of a pain in the butt. I don't really want to do it.
Right. And again, if you can make it as minimal friction as possible, especially for the end client, but even upstream, if you will, for the advisor, right? I mean, everyone's going to benefit from that more smooth transition, both client and the advisor.
Absolutely. Well, our second piece of news is Fidelity's 2025 Women in Money study. This had a few interesting stats in here that I really liked. It showed that 42% of women have been reducing their spending on non-essential activities over the last year because of economic uncertainties. And in the year ahead, 37% have committed to saving more, and 33% of women surveyed are working to pay off their debt. Another interesting point was that, according to the report, 20% of women don't have an emergency savings fund, but that's compared to 10% of men. So particularly there, seeing the difference in the two genders, I thought was interesting, but would love to get your take on all those numbers that I just spit out.
Yeah. So I'll specifically focus on the last one, because it would be interesting on how they're defining emergency funds and feeling confident in one, because what we do know, again, that stereotypically doesn't apply to every single person, but men sometimes are a bit more overconfident in our abilities. We'll apply this to finance specifically. So maybe there are similar dollar amounts from an emergency fund perspective, but the same dollar amount, the more males might be like, oh, I'm totally fine. I've got $500 in a savings account. I'm good with my emergency fund versus, others might need a little bit more. So it'd be interesting to see how they figured out the data on what they defined as an emergency fund. Are we talking $1,000? Are we talking 3 to 6 months of spending, or how do we define that term? But so my at least initial speculation would be maybe some of that data could be from some overconfidence on the male side, which would maybe level the playing field a little bit more if we actually looked at things just from sheer objectivity versus, I feel great in my emergency fund, when maybe they don't have a good one, but they allegedly feel great.
That's a very fair point. So in terms of your practice, have you noticed, or even just from what you're hearing, do women seem to be the type that are more easily frugal than men? Is it just sort of random?
Yeah, I'm even thinking back anecdotally, it just varies so much. I mean, I work with some couples where the wife might be more of the saver, the husband's more of the spender. Then there's other relationships where the husband's the saver and the wife is the spender. So there's not anything that I could share with consistency. The only insight that I would have is typically whenever I'm working with women, confidence, security, typically are words that come up maybe a little bit more compared to maybe, again, this is just broad brush strokes. This doesn't apply to every single situation, of course, but just anecdotally, men more are the freedom and growth is what they're more focused on. So I have noticed that, and I've seen different articles that suggest that, even just at our core, some of our psychology, that would make sense. But I haven't seen anything of, consistently women are having better emergency funds or men are having more emergency funds. I'm not, at least personally, haven't noticed any trends to that effect.
That's fair. And I could see how it could vary either way. I was thinking in my own relationship, I think we're both a little bit of both, but I was definitely being coaxed this year into, let's not take a big vacation this year. Let's save up for the big vacation next year, which took a lot of discipline that I don't know that I entirely had. So I should give my partner credit for that. I could see how, along the lines of what you were saying, women, I'm sure even as I've approached you, well, my concern is me and my 2 kids, and this is my kid's situation. And arguably maybe for men, it's less so, or it's framed in a different way. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. Again, I mean, each situation is going to be a little different, but we might be able to notice some of those trends, again, with that security maybe versus freedom. But something else in the article that really jumped out to me was that 2/3 of women have a plan in place to reach their goals. So even though there was some other data that suggested that they were maybe a little bit nervous about their emergency fund or some of the other areas of finance. Obviously, I'm biased as a financial planner, but even just having a plan, even if nothing has changed, because if someone, let's say you're at point A today and you develop a plan, well, nothing has actually changed. You're not to B yet. You're not to C. You're all of a sudden haven't made more money or have more of a net worth, haven't had a chance to pay off any debts at that point. But what a plan does is it gives people hope. So the fact that even if someone's financial situation hasn't yet changed, just having a plan, knowing, hey, here's the next actionable step that I have to do in my financial life, whether that's paying off debt, whether that's increasing the emergency funds. I think the word hope keeps coming to mind for me, that plan can give hope. And even though that's more of just a mindset shift at that point, that hope can really go a long way in how we're feeling about our finances and then how we then show up.
Yeah, no, it's worth a lot. Absolutely. Well, our third piece of news is data from Lili's Accountant AI, which shows that small business owners are most concerned about implementing the right tax structure for themselves and how to save money on their taxes. In looking at the top 5 questions that were posed to this AI, they were: 1, what's the best tax structure for my business? 2, how can I maximize deductions for my business? 3, how can I minimize my business taxes legally? Which I appreciated the fact that we said legally. What are my options for raising capital? And what triggers a business audit and how can I prepare for them? So were there any surprises in any of that for you? What did you make of that data?
So I've got some thoughts on it, but I want to hear your thoughts first. Even as a business owner, did some of those questions resonate with you, not resonate?
Definitely. Well, I think that my tax structure, as anybody may or may not know, I've been in business for myself about 1.5 years now. So it's one of those, look, things are growing and they're changing. Does this suit me right now? Should I be aiming more toward this? I think that that's a totally valid question. And I could see where people are looking at that. And particularly in today's environment of inflation being as high as it is and whatnot. I also am thinking about all of my deductions. Granted, I need to keep more of my paperwork a little better about that. Trying to find all of those opportunities that I feel like I may not have last year. So what I'm going to use you for.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So this was really encouraging for me because even as I was going through the list of questions, even from my experience working with clients, specifically with business owners, these are absolutely the questions that, even if they're not always coming to me directly, whenever I mention any of these things, because I'm constantly talking with client or business owner clients about what is their business structure. You might be a single member LLC now, but what do we do if we're looking to make a potential S corp election to save on taxes? And here's X, Y, or Z, the reasons that could potentially help you save on taxes. Even are we taking advantage? And I love the fact that they use the word legally, and even that's the verbiage that I use with clients, and even in a lot of my content on how do you minimize your taxes legally. How do you maximize and take advantage of all of the business deductions that you have available? Because business owners, it can be a blessing and a curse. Unfortunately, we have to pay typically some version of self-employment tax, especially before we've maybe shifted to an S corp. We might have a lot of self-employment taxes, but we do have much more flexibility. And if we were going to take a meal anyways with a client, now we're able to write off at least up to 50% of that, assuming it was a business meal. If we're driving to meet with clients, again, if we're a W-2 worker, we were going to drive regardless, and we've got all the upkeep and maintenance. But as a business owner, you can either potentially write off your vehicle or even the mileage. So there is a lot of flexibility, and it does add complexity to someone's taxes whenever they become a business owner. But because of that, it does help folks like myself that like working with business owners, because then these questions come in, and we're able to typically add a lot of value with tax planning, where if there's ideas that can save business owners tens of thousands of dollars, makes it a little easier to be like, hey, here's what my fee is. It's much less than the tens of thousands of dollars that might come to you in the way of tax savings and just one or two ideas. So yep, anecdotally, I think all these questions made a ton of sense, and I would say they're very accurate from working with many business owners.
Yeah. Well, and if you want to share the upcoming work that you're going to be doing related to taxes, just in case nobody's heard.
Yeah. So I think the government shutdown is slowing the enrolled agent official application process down. The IRS isn't typically known to be very fast in general on things, let alone when they're not even at maybe full staff or full funding. So still waiting to officially become an enrolled agent, but I did pass all my exams. All of my taxes are up to date, so I'm not worried about not getting approved. But once I do get approved, I do plan to be doing some tax preparation for clients in 2026 for tax year 2025 and moving forward. Again, we talk so much about taxes on this podcast and how many clients want tax planning, and truthfully, how few of firms do anything beyond basic elementary planning. And a lot of it is because the advisor might not have, or the firm, the expertise or the ability to, or even that first question that we're talking about here, Allie, which is how should I structure my business? If you work with most big firms, even if they allegedly do tax planning, they're not going to answer that question for you. They're not going to answer the question, what kind of deductions can you take? They might talk to you about tax loss harvesting, tax versus Roth 401k for your business, but they're not talking, or at least a lot of them aren't allowed to even, about these types of questions. So from a business owner perspective, independent advisors can have a very big leg up when it comes to this, because we can actually talk about the things that they're actually asking about. Like, notice in this, they weren't saying, should I put money in a pre-tax or a Roth 401k? Again, that's an important question, and you can save a lot of money for a client like that, but that wasn't even on their top list of questions. So yeah, I'm really excited to be able to add that to my firm for next year.
Yeah. Well, and now that you mention it, actually, so the thought hadn't even really crossed my mind. Like, HSAs didn't make it. There were so many like other tax related things that it really does make you feel like either the investor or the taxpayer understands that it's really more the structure, like these macro things and deductions that can make a difference versus I'm sure that they do make a difference, but whether you do Roth or not, it seems anyway a little bit more minimal.
Right. And just again, the more complexity isn't with, again, I love health savings account for examples that you mentioned, but that often is like, I mean, we saw here, not the biggest concern. It's, hey, how do I structure my business? And even if we're talking about potential tax savings, that's a pretty huge one. Depending on the situation, of course, each one's a bit different, but I mean, we're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars, maybe even into the tens of thousands, by shifting from a single member LLC tax as a sole proprietorship versus going to an S corp, paying themselves a reasonable salary, taking the remaining as a distribution. That could be tens of thousands of dollars of tax savings over 3 to 5+ years. So when we talk about the things that we're focusing on, sure, let's put money in a health savings account, maybe save us a few grand in taxes. That ends up seeming relatively small compared to the big problems on, oh, I didn't realize that I could get this extra $10,000 business deduction, or I could pay myself differently, make a different entity or business structure election, and save tens of thousands of dollars over the next several years. So it's kind of based on how big is the problem or potential challenge. And there's a reason it's bigger, because there's also a bigger reward if you solve it and figure out the right structure for your business. So again, I think I'm well prepared and excited about working with more business owners on this type of thing, even on the tax prep side. And I know a lot of other independent advisors who are truly leaning into this type of tax planning. just very, very big differentiator compared to some of the other firms out there.
Absolutely. So our last piece of news for this week is the 2025 AI benchmarking survey by the ACA Group and National Society of Compliance Professionals. As we've talked about AI on this podcast, I thought that this would be of interest to people. The piece found that 71% of those surveyed formally use AI, which was up 26% from the prior year. And 53% of compliance leaders now say that AI has improved their efficiency. Another big stat and big difference was that 48% of firms have a formal AI governance committee, which was up from 32%. So these massive leaps in just the matter of a year, I mean, it's believable given all the news that we see about AI and just even my own slight usage of AI. But what did you make of all these stats?
Anecdotally, they seem to check out from, again, even what we're saying, like you mentioned, Ali, from the different articles where like at the beginning it was almost some caution with a lot of firms, again, especially larger ones, that, well, we don't know what it's going to look like yet, and we don't have the time to put all these different policies in place. But I think over time, I mean, even in the financial planning space, there are becoming more financial services specific AI type tools, and that likely is a bit easier to adopt because they're going, even from a marketing perspective, these types of companies are going to be leading with all the security and encryption and all sorts of cybersecurity and jargon that I probably fully don't understand, but the compliance officers and the things that do make sense to them, they're getting answered likely much easier compared to, we'll just say, like a large language model like a ChatGPT is for everyone. It's not industry specific, but some of these industry specific tools now are coming out. Like I said, I think they're giving confidence to even some of the larger firms so that they don't have to do as much diligence, or it doesn't take as long to do it, because we know your business. We work with a bunch of other financial services firms. They're likely proactively answering questions that some of these firms might be having from a compliance perspective. So I think that likely is a huge reason why more are adopting it. And we're seeing, I mean, even 53% of compliance said they're seeing benefits. So that wasn't surprising either.
And it's good to see, because we've had articles that have said AI is total crap and nobody's really using it. We've had everybody's in on AI, and it would be lovely if we could get a definitive answer. Although I guess to a point that you had made earlier, it probably depends on the group that you find yourself in. So
right,
we'll see.
Yeah, and again, I truly believe that when used correctly, AI can absolutely benefit the end client. I think the advisor can become more efficient. I've recently started using a more detailed AI tool in client meetings and prospect meetings, and that's allowed me to be even more present, because I like to take really good notes, but it's sometimes tough, even when you're genuinely trying to pay attention. If you have to type something really quickly that you don't want to miss, now you're just not as fully present. So I feel like I'm even more present in meetings, and that was just one minor change that I've added. So I'm gaining more efficiency, but also the end client, of course, benefits, because now I'm even more present and can ask better questions in those types of meetings. So yeah, I only see more firms using AI moving forward, AI only getting better moving forward. So yeah, I'm excited to see what it looks like in 3 months, let alone the next year or two.
Exactly right. Well, speaking of what's coming up this year, so one last little tidbit of recent news is that Financial Planning Association has a new CEO, Dennis J. Moore. He was previously the interim CEO, and he held several national and Texas chapter level leadership positions within the organization. So speaking of the end of the year, he's going to be at the FPA annual conference, which is next week in Vegas. I know you're not terribly far, so if you feel like shooting by, but anybody else, if you're going to be there, if you see him, feel free to say congratulations.
Very awesome. And this time of year, this is a good time of year to go to Vegas. It's not crazy hot, so it's probably going to get good weather out there too, but very exciting.
Well, that tops today. If I could tell you, being outside, I actually, while picking up my daughter, I got smacked in the arm with somebody's umbrella that flew out of their hand, because this is the kind of like wind rain that I would take that any day of the week.
Yeah, well, you probably don't want to know what it's like in Southern California right now, but it's sunny and actually a bit of a warm one. It's going to cool down to the rest of the week, but it's sunny and says 81 right now, and I think the rest of the week's going to be like 75. So we'll have to tough through the heat wave today, but should be good moving forward. Yes, I acknowledge I'm being a bit facetious, and growing up on the East Coast, I know how spoiled I am now, because I always love asking people out here, oh, have you grown up here? Have you lived in other places? And especially when people are like, oh, I've only grown up here, I'm always like, yeah, I can acknowledge how spoiled I am. I'm definitely spoiled now. I'm like, oh, it is a little warmer today, or oh, it's a little cooler, but still in the back of my mind, I'm like, better than getting hit in the side with an umbrella because it's windy and rainy. So yeah, that.
You know what, though? I do it to myself, because I say my family's here, and then B, I love the 4 seasons. Snow on the first day is lovely. And then you see snow for like a week and you're like, ugh. So yes, I do it to myself. So you have every right to be happy about it and have earned your Southern California wonderfulness.
Yeah. And we pay for it too. But that is at least one thing I like to say is I'm literally looking around outside right here. We can look around and be like, you know what? I can see the ocean. The weather's pretty nice. It's a bummer that we have to pay a lot for cost of living and our taxes are a bit high, but at least I can look around and see where my money is going to some degree. So that makes me feel a little bit better about it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you as always for a great conversation and looking forward to seeing what next week brings.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Looking forward to next week, Allie.
Thank you.